Every cup of his palm wine tasted like paradise, and silently stole a year from the drinker's life. By the time Obodo-oma realized the truth, half the village was gone, and the quiet wine cellar was no stranger at all. Welcome to Tales at Dusk, the archive of rich African tales. In the peaceful village of Obodo-oma, life followed ancient laws so strict that even the gods were said to fear them. Theft, adultery, and murder carried only one punishment: death. Because of this, the village lived in order and harmony. Everyone walked straight, spoke truth, and avoided anything that could bring shame. Into this disciplined world grew Obidike, an orphan born of hardship, nurtured by struggle, and shaped by the village's gentle hands. He had no inheritance except the good name he built for himself. Obidike became known for one thing: his honesty was unshakable. He returned every cowrie he was given, settled quarrels among children, and never ignored wrongdoing, no matter who was involved. Men respected him, women prayed for him, children followed him like chicks after a hen. His clean spirit and honesty impressed even the palace, and at 19 he was chosen by the Igwe to serve as a palace guard. Igwe would always say, "A man who walks with truth walks with the gods." Life continued smoothly until one fateful afternoon, when the Igwe traveled to a neighboring town. With the Igwe gone, discipline in the palace relaxed. Some guards dozed, some wandered off. But Obidike, as always, stayed alert and dutiful. During his routine patrol, he heard strange sounds coming from the corridor that led to the Igwe's private chamber. Soft gasps, hurried whispers, a woman's stifled laughter. At first he thought perhaps the queen needed help, but as he moved closer, the sounds changed, became unmistakable, forbidden. Curiosity and duty pulled him forward. The door to the royal chamber was slightly open. Obidike peeked in, and what he saw struck him like lightning. Uwakwe, his fellow guard, was in the Igwe's bed, and with him was the Igwe's wife. The three froze in horror. Uwakwe's face drained of blood. The queen's hands trembled as she clutched her wrapper. Obidike staggered back, stunned. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse them. He didn't even threaten to report what he saw. He simply whispered, "I am sorry," and walked away quietly. But his silence was more terrifying than any accusation. The Igwe's wife panicked violently. Uwakwe trembled. They knew Obidike's nature. He could endure hunger, insults, and hardship, but he could not see evil and stay silent. Their lives were now dangling between his honesty and the deadly laws of Obodo-oma. And in their fear, a dark idea began to grow. Because if Obidike spoke, they would die. "He must fall before we do," Uwakwe said, voice shaking. "We must destroy him before he destroys us." At first, the Igwe's wife resisted the thought, but desperation has a way of silencing conscience. Within minutes, she was part of a wicked plan that would change the destiny of Obodo-oma forever. The most sacred symbol of authority in the entire kingdom was the Ofor, the staff the Igwe used to pray, judge, bless, and lead. Without the Ofor, the Igwe could do nothing. Without it, no royal rituals were valid. Losing it was worse than a crime. It was a spiritual disaster, and they chose it as their weapon. The Igwe's wife quietly stole the Ofor from its sacred stand. She wrapped it carefully in cloth, making sure no god would see it. Then she handed it to Uwakwe. "Hide it in Obidike's box," she whispered. "He had trusted. No one will suspect him until they find it." At that same moment, she rushed out of the chamber and called Obidike in a trembling voice. "Please, Obidike," she cried, falling to her knees in front of him. "Please don't expose me. I beg you in the name of our ancestors." Her tears flowed like rain. She held his feet, screaming, begging, shaking. Her performance was so dramatic that Obidike froze in confusion. While Obidike tried to calm her, Uwakwe slipped behind him, sneaked into his small resting room, opened his wooden box, and hid the Ofor inside, covering it with Obidike's wrapper. The deed was done in seconds. By the time Obidike realized anything unusual was happening, their plan had already succeeded. The Igwe's wife wiped her tears. Uwakwe wiped his sweat. Both exchanged a silent glance. They had turned the purest heart in the village into the perfect scapegoat. The day the Igwe returned to Obodo-oma should have been peaceful, but destiny was sharpening its knife behind the scenes. As tradition demanded, the Igwe could not utter a word to anyone until he had held the Ofor, offered prayers of thanks, and touched the sacred earth. That ritual was the heartbeat of Obodo-oma's leadership, but when the palace attendants went to bring out the Ofor, it was gone. At first, everyone thought it was a small mistake. Maybe it had been misplaced. Maybe a guard cleaned the chamber and moved it. But the more they searched, the more the palace trembled in fear. Because the Ofor of Obodo-oma did not disappear. It was protected, guarded. Spiritual eyes watched over it. If it was missing, something was terribly wrong. The palace erupted into chaos. The guards scattered like ants whose hill had been kicked over. Even the Igwe's calm face cracked with worry. His voice thundered, "Search every room. Turn the palace upside down. The Ofor must be found before sunset." Obidike wanted, desperately, to speak. His heart was heavy. He wanted to confess what he had witnessed in the queen's chamber. But in Obodo-oma, no one speaks or interrupts before the Ofor rites are done. Tradition silenced him. He stood helplessly, watching as guards tore through cupboards, lifted mats, shook palm fiber baskets, and upturned every pot in sight. His eyes kept drifting toward the queen and Uwakwe, but both of them wore perfectly carved masks of shock and innocence. Fear tasted bitter on their tongues, but their faces remained calm, because the Ofor was exactly where they wanted it to be, in Obidike's box. After hours of searching, when hope was almost gone, a trembling guard shouted, "Wait, check the guards' quarters again." They all rushed toward the small room the palace guards shared. They scattered their mats, overturned stools, searched under the low bed frames. Then another guard opened Obidike's wooden box. A single gasp broke the air. Then another. Then another. There it was, the Ofor of Obodo-oma, wrapped carefully and hidden in Obidike's box. It was like lightning struck the room. The queen covered her mouth with both hands, pretending to faint. Uwakwe widened his eyes in dramatic shock. The other guard stiffened in disbelief. The Igwe's face hardened instantly. This was not just theft. This was not just betrayal. This was sacrilege. And in Obodo-oma, sacrilege tasted worse than poison. Obidike opened his mouth to speak, finally, but his words never had the chance to form. The Igwe, consumed by the laws of the land, raised his hand with finality. "Obidike, you have committed the abomination of the highest order. You shall be buried alive in the evil forest. Only your head will remain above the earth, to be devoured by vultures." The villagers shouted in agreement. Obidike fell to his knees, screaming his innocence. But no one listened. The laws of Obodo-oma were unforgiving, and so the trap was complete. two guilty lovers breathe freely again, while the one innocent man walked toward a fate darker than night itself. The guards dragged him forward. Uwakwe hid a wicked smile. The Igwe's wife lowered her eyes, pretending sorrow. The chains on Obidike's wrists jingled like the bells of doom. As they dragged him through the village paths, the sky darkened unnaturally fast, as though the land itself mourned. Birds grew silent, even the wind slowed. Children peeped from behind fences, old men sighed deeply, women pressed their hands against their chests. Only 3 people knew the truth. The Igwe's wife, Uwakwe, and the gods. When they reached the edge of the evil forest, the gods hesitated for a breath. The forest was feared. Even the bravest hunters avoided its heart, but duty drove them. They dug a narrow pit deep into the earth, long enough to swallow a man upright. They tied Obidike's legs, lifted him, and lowered him into the pit, burying him vertically, leaving only his head above the soil. The final covering of earth fell with a dull thud. Obidike cried, "I am innocent! Please, I am innocent!" But the forest swallowed his voice. Night settled over the evil forest like a dark curse, as Obidike stood buried upright, his whole body trapped beneath the cold earth, with only his head left above ground. The soil pressed tightly against his chest, making every breath painful. The once vibrant, beloved palace guard was now alone, helpless, and abandoned in the most feared place in Obodo-oma. The forest was not merely silent, it was watching him. As the moon hid behind shifting clouds, eerie sounds filled the night. Leaves rustled without wind, strange whispers floated through the trees, distant drums echoed as though ghosts were celebrating a ritual only the dead understood. Hyenas laughed in the dark, their voices carrying the cruelty of creatures who knew a man was trapped and unable to run. Above him, vultures circled slowly, waiting for his strength to fail. Obidike cried out for help. He begged, he pleaded, but no one returned. He thought of the people he protected, the children who followed him, the villagers who once praised his honesty, and wondered how they could watch him dragged to this fate without a single question. He felt betrayed, confused, heartbroken. Most of all, he felt the weight of injustice crushing his spirit. Fatigue crept over him. His throat dried, his body weakened. He whispered to the gods, "If I am innocent, save me." But the forest answered with silence. Hours passed like days. Even the air felt heavy. His head slumped forward as the last of his strength faded. Then everything changed. The forest suddenly grew still, unnaturally still. The animals went silent. Even the vultures froze mid-air. A cold, ancient wind swept through the trees, and the darkness around Obidike thickened. From that darkness, a figure emerged, bent, slow, almost ghost-like. An old man with cracked, earth-colored skin, deep-set, glowing eyes, and a twisted root staff stepped into the moonlight. He looked older than time itself. Obidike trembled, thinking death had finally come for him. But the old man spoke softly. "No, child, I have not come to kill you." He stepped closer, his presence commanding the air around him. "I am Aja Ani, the spirit and deity of the earth." At his words, the ground beneath Obidike shifted as though recognizing its master. The boy buried by man had been found by the god of the earth. Aja Ani, the one the villagers prayed to when planting their crops, the one they feared when performing land rituals, the guardian of justice, the ancient judge of innocence and guilt. Obidike's breath caught in his throat. Why would a great deity come to him, an orphan, a simple palace guard? Ani leaned on his staff and looked at him closely, his voice calm and heavy. I watched the earth receive you against its will. The innocent cannot die while the guilty live. Your blood cried out, and the land answered. As he spoke, the ground beneath Obidike vibrated, and a faint glow rose from the soil around him. Ani lifted his staff and muttered ancient words lost to time. The earth suddenly shifted, loosening its grip on Obidike's trapped body. The soil softened, rose, and then released him completely, pushing him upward like a child being lifted by a parent. Moments later, Obidike stood fully on the forest floor, trembling and weak, but alive. He fell to his knees in gratitude and shock. Ani nodded slightly. Rise. You are under my protection now. The deity led him deeper into the evil forest, to a hidden clearing where no human had stepped in centuries. There, a small hut woven from roots and vines stood glowing with faint blue light. For the first time since his burial, Obidike felt safe. Inside the hut, Ani healed his wounds with herbs and chants, fed him with fruits that never spoiled, and gave him water from a spring that glowed softly in the moonlight. He told Obidike the truth. The land of Obodo-oma had carried too many hidden sins. Its leaders were careless. Its justice system had cracks hidden beneath tradition, and his wrongful judgment had awakened the wrath of the earth. Obidike listened, shocked. The deity continued, You will not die tonight, you will live, and one day you will return to the world of men. In that moment, fear became strength. Pain became purpose. The boy they buried alive was no more. A new Obidike was being formed by the hands of the earth itself. Ani had saved him, but not without reason. 21 years passed, yet Obidike did not age like ordinary men. The touch of the deity preserved him. His strength grew, his spirit sharpened. His mind became calm like still water. The pain of betrayal slowly hardened into quiet resolve. He never forgot Uwakwe. He never forgot the queen. He never forgot the villagers who judged him without listening, but he also never forgot who he was, the boy with a clean spirit. One evening, as the forest glowed orange under the setting sun, Ani summoned Obidike to the sacred clearing. His voice was deeper, heavier. Your time among spirits is over. You will return to the world of men. Obidike's heart raced. To do what? To live or to judge? Ani raised one hand and two paths appeared before them, one glowing faintly with white light, the other dark and burning like smoldering coal. Forgiveness or vengeance, Ani said. If you choose forgiveness, you will live quietly among humans and never return to Obodo-oma. But if you choose vengeance, you will reclaim what was taken. The guilty will pay. Obidike stood still. He remembered his burial, the screams of the villagers, the lies, the betrayal. His voice was steady. I choose vengeance. Ani nodded, not in approval, not in condemnation, but in acceptance. With a wave of his hand, kegs of mystical palm wine appeared, fresh, sweet, and deadly. Ani said, Sell this to them. Every cup steals a year from the drinker. Through this the land will judge them. Obidike bowed in gratitude. He would return to Obodo-oma, not as the boy they buried, but as a man shaped by a deity, and carrying the wine of judgment. They now know him as Ikonsor, the quiet palm wine seller. He rented a small hut at the edge of the marketplace, a place where strangers usually settled. Placed 3 large kegs outside and hung a simple wooden sign, Fresh palm wine for sale. No one knew he was Obidike. No one recognized him. To them, he was just another traveler looking for a living. Ajani's enchanted palm wine was irresistible. One sip tasted like fresh morning dew mixed with ripe palm fruits. Word spread like wildfire. There is a new wine cellar in town. His wine is sweeter than honey. People rushed to Ikonsor's stall, farmers, hunters, market women, even some palace guards. The taste shocked everyone. They had never tasted palm wine so fresh, so smooth, so perfect. Within days, no other wine cellar in Obodo-oma had customers. Ikonsor dominated the entire market. The wine was the talk of the village. People bought calabashes, pots, and even gourds to take home. Celebrations demanded it. Naming ceremonies requested it. Funerals, marriages, festivals. Everyone wanted Ikonsor's wine. But what they didn't know was this. Every cup stole a year from their lives. Young men who drank heavily began to fall ill mysteriously. Women who enjoyed daily cups started aging faster. Elders who drank sparingly weakened quickly. At first, the deaths were slow, just whispers. A young man collapsing after the marketplace. A woman dying in her sleep. An elder passing away unexpectedly. But soon it became clear something dark was happening. Fear gripped Obodo-oma. People started murmuring about a strange calamity. Why are our youths dying early? Why are our elders going so fast? Is this a curse? Some blamed witches. Some blamed evil wind. Some blamed neighboring villages. But no one, not even for a second, suspected Ikonsor. His face was calm, his voice was gentle, his business was booming. Every night he returned to his thatched hut, and Ajani's spirit silently refilled his empty kegs with fresh, enchanted wine. The earth was patient. The judgment of the land had begun. Ironically, the more people died, the more Ikonsor's wine was demanded. Funerals needed large amounts of palm wine. Elders requested it for courage. The Igwe's palace ordered it for rituals. Ikonsor became the most popular man in the village. People greeted him with respect. Women praised him. The same villagers who buried him alive now depended on him for drink. And as they drank, their lives shortened, quietly, silently, without suspicion. Obodo-oma had no idea it was welcoming back the same son it had betrayed, and drinking from the very hands of vengeance. The deaths in Obodo-oma grew so alarming that even the bravest elders began to fear sleep. Young men, strong yesterday, collapsed today. Women who danced at markets were found lifeless the following morning. Elders who were still walking around suddenly slumped without warning. The village was drowning in confusion, and still Ikonsor's palm wine remained the most demanded drink. No matter how many people died, the villagers continued visiting his hut, praising the sweetness of his wine, drinking deeply, unaware they were sipping away their own years. When the deaths became too many to ignore, the Igwe called an emergency meeting. Fear clouded his face. The village he once ruled with pride was now wrapped in sorrow. At the meeting he spoke. "Our people are dying. This is no ordinary sickness. We must consult the oracle." The chiefs nodded. The entire council moved to the shrine that same evening. The diviner, an old man with cowries hanging from his neck, dropped his sacred kola nuts onto the earth. Immediately his eyes widened. His voice trembled as he spoke. A grave injustice was committed in this land. A young man was wrongly judged, wrongfully buried alive in the evil forest. The Igwe froze. The chiefs exchanged looks. The diviner continued, his voice shaking. "The earth is angry. Ajani saved the innocent one, and now the wrath of the deity is upon Obodo-oma." Silence wrapped the room. The Igwe gathered courage and asked, "Who is this man? Who did we wrong?" The oracle threw the kola nuts again. They bounced, settled, and pointed in one direction. The diviner pointed toward the market square and spoke. "He lives among us. He sells palm wine. His name is Ikonsor." The chiefs gasped. The Igwe's heart pounded. Ikonsor? The sweet wine seller? The same man who was becoming the village favorite? How could he be the one? The Igwe sent guards to summon him. Ikonsor refused to come. The guards returned breathless. He said the Igwe can come to him if he wants to speak. The audacity shocked the council, but the oracle warned, "To save this land, you must humble yourselves." And so, for the first time in the history of Obodo-oma, the entire council, led by the Igwe, walked to a common man's hut. When they reached Ikonsor's small thatched house, they found him sitting calmly beside his palm wine drums. He did not stand. He did not bow. The Igwe fell to his knees, followed by the chiefs. "Ikonsor, if we wronged you, forgive us." Ikonsor looked at them, eyes cold, face expressionless. "You want the truth?" The entire village held its breath. Then he spoke. "I am Obidike, the boy you buried alive 21 years ago." The crowd gasped. The Igwe's wife trembled violently. Uwakwe's legs almost gave way. Ikonsor Obidike continued, voice steady. "I saw the queen and Uwakwe defile the king's chamber. Before I could speak, they hid the ophor in my box, and you all believed their lie." Silence, heavy and choking. The truth hit the people like thunder. Mothers covered their mouths. Men stepped back in shock. The elders trembled. The Igwe's wife collapsed to the ground, her body shaking uncontrollably. Uwakwe hid behind the crowd, his face pale. The Igwe himself broke down and wept. He whispered, "Obidike, is this truly you?" Obidike nodded slowly. "Yes, the boy you buried, the innocent you condemned, the son you rejected." The Igwe's tears fell like rain. For the first time in decades, the proud king bowed his head to the earth in shame. Still on his knees, the Igwe pleaded, "My son, forgive us. Tell us what we must do to restore life to Obodo-oma." Obidike rose to his feet, his voice calm but heavy with centuries of pain. "The earth has judged you. Ajani has drunk your years, but mercy is still possible." He pointed at the Igwe's wife and Uwakwe. "But these two must face justice." The crowd erupted in anger. They shouted, "Kill them! Bury them alive!" The same crowd that once condemned Obidike now demanded blood for him. The Igwe did not resist. His voice was hoarse. "Take them to the evil forest. Let them pay for their wickedness." The guards grabbed the queen and Uwakwe. There was no defending themselves. Their cries echoed through the village as they were dragged away, the same path Obidike had walked 21 years ago. The punishment was identical, buried upright, head above the earth, left for the forest to decide their fate. Thus, the cycle was complete. The Igwe asked Obidike how to end the curse, and Obidike gave clear instructions. A sacrifice must be made to Ajani. The village must confess their error publicly. The earth must be appeased with purity, honesty, and truth. The entire village gathered at the shrine, bearing gifts, goats, yam, kola nuts, and white cloth. They knelt and begged the deity for forgiveness. Obidike poured the last calabash of enchanted palm wine onto the ground, symbolically ending the judgment. A calm breeze swept through the land, and the death stopped instantly. Peace returned to Obodo-oma. With deep gratitude and shame, the Igwe promised Obidike, I will restore all you lost. You shall have land, a house, servants if you desire. Obodo-oma will honor you till the end of time. Obidike accepted, not out of greed, but because justice had finally been served. He was given a large farmland, a beautiful house, and a place of honor among the elders. Children who once feared him now ran to him again. Women greeted him with respect. Men bowed when he passed. The village that buried him now celebrated him. At sunset, Obidike stood outside his new home, gazing toward the evil forest. The wind whispered softly, as though Aja'ani himself was speaking. A calm smile touched his lips. The innocent boy they tried to erase had become the man the earth itself restored. Justice had walked its full circle, and Obodo-oma would never forget his name again. In life, truth may bend, but it can never break. When people use lies, fear, or power to bury the innocent, they are only planting a seed that will one day rise again, stronger, louder, and backed by the justice of destiny. Evil may hide for a season, but the earth remembers everything, and when the time is right, it will speak. Let every man guard his actions, for the harm we do in secret often returns in ways we cannot outrun. If you were in Obidike's shoes after 21 years of betrayal, loneliness, and pain, would you choose forgiveness or vengeance? And why? Drop your answer in the comments. Let's discuss like a true Tales at Dusk family. And if this story touched you, frightened you, or taught you something, please like, share, and subscribe to Tales at Dusk. Your support helps me bring more powerful African stories to life. Don't forget to turn on notifications, because every dusk, another powerful tale waits to be told.